welcome to the communications line. Hello. Well, you're doing what we say is allowed. You're allowed on here without identifying yourself, and that's okay too. However, if you would like, you're welcome to ID yourself, but not necessary. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we're up a little early today, obviously, but that's okay. We had a great show this morning. We had a beautiful lady, Elizabeth Bunbury, B-U-N-B-U-R-Y, Bunbury, and she is the leader and project coordinator of a project called Answered Prayers Project. And what a great, great opportunity we had today to hear from her. And if you'd like to know more about her project, I would encourage you to go to her website, and that is Answered Prayers. Now that's plural. Answered Prayers Project.org. Answered Prayers Project.org. And you'll find that indeed they have a lot of answered prayer. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we're thankful that the Lord allows us to have some answered prayers as well. We're going to talk to you today about some prayers that we believe have been answered. And one of our prayers that I believe has been answered is in reference to the fact that our sister in the Lord and our brother in the Lord are still alive. Brother Gary and Sister Linda are alive, ladies and gentlemen. We prayed for their safety even before they went on the road. They were traveling. They were going north. They went through Reno, but somewhere near Reno, we're not really sure what happened, but somewhere near Reno, they were seen rolling off into the ditch. And so we're not, like I said, we're not sure what happened. Some witnesses seem to indicate that there could have been a hit and run, that there was a car leaving the scene, it appears. Whether there was damage to the car, no one was able to testify to that. But Linda Jones and her fiance, Gary Blodgett, were traveling on behalf of what is now called the White Horse Family Rights Council. And if you'd like to go and check that out, you can simply by going to that website. And that website, ladies and gentlemen, is indeed White Horse Family Rights Council, C-O-U-N-C-I-L, White Horse Family Council, dot L-I-F-E, White Horse Family Rights Council, dot L-I-V-E, live. Now, we do thank the Lord for you being here with us, and we do thank the Lord. And I am seeing someone arrive here in studio with me, and I'm going to have to clean off my desk now so he can find a spot. But I tell him one rule for coming into the pastor's studio and office is you can't make a mess. You can't make a mess. But I'll tell you what I want you to do. I'm going to have to leave the set for a moment because we're only getting half of you. And I know you used to be fast, and now you're just half-assed.
You want me to turn the camera slightly? Is that what you're saying?
No, that's okay. I'll do it. But what I want you to do is I want you to introduce yourself and tell us what you're doing here.
That is a heck of a question, and if I had the answer to that question, I would probably answer it. However, let me give you what I do have. My name is Stephen Davis. I am the Director of Security and Legal Affairs here at the First Southern Baptist Church and Sanctuary in Buena Park. I unfortunately have been up to my derriere the last couple of days. First of all, I've been putting together an appellate brief to go to the Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals on a case, and I'm sure you can talk to any attorney and ask them what's it like trying to write an appellate brief and get it filed, and they'll roll their eyes, they might pass out, but they'll simply tell you that it's not fun. So I've been trying to do that. Next of all, we have been dealing with two of our staff members who were seriously injured in a car crash. One is Linda, the other one's Gary. They are with the White Horse Family Research Council. They're also working on a case out of Arizona where we were successful in keeping a father and son united despite some problems with the government. They were the ones that are writing the status reports for the court, and of course now they're not able to do that. Our difficulty is that they are up way north of here, and so we're having to get all of our information secondhand, which is frustrating. And as we get more information, we'll let you know. Apparently Gary is conscious and is doing a little bit better. And as to Linda, she is still in a coma, and she's not doing very good. So we will keep you informed in regards to that. The other things that are going on is, for those of you that are following the Bundy case, it is getting more and more interesting that the defense counsel, who is Joel Hansen and Larry Klugman, are Clayman, sorry, working diligently on that case. They have gotten a civil suit filed against everybody because what they were doing is so illegal. So interesting that the government is prosecuting them on a criminal case. They are prosecuting the government on a civil case. So kind of an interesting way to go to that battle.
Well, I had the privilege this morning, ladies and gentlemen, as the pastor here of the church and as the head of our organization, I had the privilege to be on the telephone with Brother Gary, and it's Blodgett, I believe, right?
Blodgett, yes.
Blodgett, yeah, okay. Anyway, I did have the privilege to be on the line with him, and he is in a lot of pain, as you might imagine, but a great deal of his pain, in all honesty, is emotional as well as physical, because his dear fiancée, Linda, is indeed in a induced comatose. It's not caused by the action, but they did put her in a coma because they're trying to control ministering to them, and sometimes that's required. And we want you to pray for her and pray for him. And it's going to be a long day of recovering, unfortunately, because she has both arms broken and one leg broken. She also has some blood in the cavity near the brain. They're not really sure what that's from. But at any rate, that's what's going on. And he had seven broken ribs, and also had blood coming in or out of his lung, wherever it was not supposed to be, and they had to put a tube in there. And so he is in some pretty severe pain. But we do want to continue to pray with them and for them, and we thank you for joining us. We're going to have someone join us in a little while. One of our other people that are on staff with us is a lady by the name of Leanne and her husband Marvin, and they have been very busy, as you might imagine today, as the rest of us have been, in reference to this event that has occurred. And I think Leanne's going to join us in a little while and share with us some of the things that she's been doing. Not to brag on her, but just I think sometimes it's good to give our attorney, our pastor, anyone, to give words of wisdom, if you would, And one of the things that Leanne has been doing is contacting several people in reference to this situation. Let me give you another example of that occurred very quickly after we heard about this yesterday. When I talked to Brother Gary this morning, he said, please pass along to our Director of Security and Legal Advice, Mr. Davis, and he said, even though Mr. Davis is not in the same religion as Brother Gary and Sister Linda, they are Mormons, and he is not, but because of his tenacity and working, and Gary wanted me to give to you his thanks because he said it was amazing the number of people that you contacted. And he said, so many of our people, and Gary said, in fact, some of them we didn't even know how to get in touch with. But that's, I think, some of the practical things that can be done. And Leanne has been doing it from a little bit different perspective. That is, she's been contacting some other ministries that do the same kind of prayer ministry we do. So she should be joining us in a little while, maybe sharing some of that with us as well.
Well, on that comment, and I thank Gary for the compliment, it's one of the advantages of being both a retired law enforcement officer and a certified class action plaintiff's counsel. As Pastor Drake can tell us, him having being a licensed private investigator, investigations is everything. Amen. And the ability to find information is important in any of these endeavors that even remotely touch on the law. So in my case, because I have spent on more than one occasion trying to track down people and do things with it, I was able to track down the emergency standby people for the LDS Church, and as soon as I announced to them that a bishop of theirs from this area was in the hospital and been injured, then they immediately got things rolling, and I wound up getting phone calls from people I didn't even know that they had put in contact. Amen. So I'm happy that they were able to contact him, let him know that, hey, we do care, we are saying prayers, and we are hoping for the best. But having crashed an airplane and spent a month in a coma, and then 6 months confined to a bed, another year confined to a wheelchair, I can tell you how emotionally and mentally devastating that sort of an injury is. Yes. So certainly, just from my personal experience, my heart and prayers goes out to Gary and Linda, and as not trying to sound the least bit risque about any of this, but the thing that is applicable to what we have here is been there, done that, got the scars. Yeah,
and even if we haven't had the scars, and many of us have, but the bottom line is we know and our heart goes out to them. So please pray for Gary and for Linda. And we're going to move on with the show now. And
one more thing, and then we'll let them go on the show. If you are the least bit interested in sending get well cards or flowers or anything like that, you can send them either to us and we'll get them up there, or you can send them directly. If you send them directly, it is the Renown, R-E-N-O-W-N, Hospital in Reno, Nevada. And you can address them to either Gary Blodgett, and that's Gary, G-A-R-Y. His last name is Blodgett, B-L-O-D-G-E-T-T, at the hospital. Unfortunately, Linda is still in a coma, so she wouldn't be able to appreciate you caring, but at least she might have something waiting for her. Linda is L-Y-N-D-A. Her last name is Jones, common spelling, J-O-N-E-S. So if you want to get well cards or flowers or things like that sent up to them, certainly we'd appreciate it.
Amen. What I was putting in here is see if we could put Renown Hospital in Reno, Nevada. There it is. I think it'll come up, and
yep,
we can help you with that. And you did spell it right.
Yes, sir.
R-E-N-O-W-N. And we would encourage you to get in touch with them and let them know. Let's see if we can get maybe an address here. They are in Reno, Nevada, and that's not what I wanted. But let me see. Let me see if I can find it. Find a doctor. And
well, I do things old-fashioned, so I do it in writing. The address of the hospital is 1500 East 2nd Street, Reno, Nevada.
all right, and it's Renown, Renown, and we do thank you for caring and for sharing, and we appreciate that. Now, hand me that paperwork right there.
This one?
Would, please.
Yeah, I was just reading it. I find that interesting.
This is an interesting case that we've been on, and the gentleman that we're going to ask about now was not in a car wreck, was not in an accident, and yet he is being hurt, very much so, by our government. His name is Cliven Bundy. He's one of 19 people who the government has put in jail. And the federal judge that was on this case, that was challenged about whether she should recuse herself or not, is Judge Gloria Navarro. And she said Wednesday she will not remove herself from the criminal case stemming from the 2014 armed standoff with law enforcement near Bunkerville. And it was my privilege and honor to be there as a chaplain for Oath Keepers. It was my privilege to be there as a friend of Cliven and Miss Bundy. And I thank the Lord for them. And these two lawyers there have done a great job, and they'll continue to do a great job. And we thank the Lord for them.
And let me comment real
Sure.
quick so that our audience gets a feel for that. I unfortunately have also had to deal with the federal criminal justice system, and there's words difficult to describe how bad it is. What is the
Besides
problem?
that, this is a family show, and we don't want you cussing on the family show.
Absolutely. I would, to give it a biblical perspective, think about Christ being in the wilderness for the last 40 days and him having to deal with the temptations of Satan and all of the bad things that Satan was trying to do to him while he was wandering the desert. That's pretty much what it's like being in the federal criminal system.
Yes.
So that should give you a little bit of a feel for it. What is so bad about this judge is this judge obviously has direct connections with people who are going to be witnesses in this case, one of which is Harry Reid. In the system for judges, it's not a question of whether you do or do not have a bias, you do or do not hate the defendant, or do you or do not have a conflict of interest, and that term has certain definitions. For example, you could not sit on a case in which the defendant was a blood relative of yours. That would be a conflict of interest. Couldn't do it. But one of the other things in a federal case is an appearance of impropriety. So if it just looks funny, if it smells funny, that's enough. Here's why this looks funny and smells funny. This is my opinion. And opinions are like belly buttons. Just because you have one, you don't show it to everybody, but I'm going to show you mine, my opinion.
Okay, good. Thank you. I told you this is a family program.
Absolutely. This original incident happened in 2014, 2 years ago. Not a shot was fired. Nobody was hurt. We have a bunch of dead cows because the government decided to get revenge by killing Bundy's cattle, but nobody from the Bundy group shot at, hurt, beat up, punched out, or did anything to any of these federal agents, which I'm beginning to think were trespassing on Bundy's property, but we'll talk about in a little bit. But the bottom line is, nobody got hurt. So she is now saying that, I cannot release Bundy on bail because A, he might flee, or B, he might hurt somebody.
And by the way, there was someone hurt at that 2014 event. It was Mr. Bundy's daughter who the BLM threw to the ground and attacked her. She was hurt, but she was the only one that was hurt other than cows being shot.
Understood, and that's. But what they're saying that they're charged with is conspiracy to assault federal officers. Let's talk a little bit about the difference between assault and battery. As you know, the Energizer Bunny was recently arrested. And you may ask, what was he arrested for?
What was he arrested for?
Battery. Moving right along.
I walked right into that.
Thank you.
Anyway.
Battery is the offensive touching. In other words, battery, there has to be actual physical contact. So if Pastor Drake's drinking his coffee and I suddenly grab him, this is a battery. I have touched him without his permission.
That's right.
An assault is placing you in fear. I hate your guts and I'm going to punch your lights out. I have placed you in fear of a battery. But an assault is not a physical touching. No contact has been made. You may have placed somebody in fear of the touching. You have not touched him. So now that they're saying that this is alleged conspiracy to assault, what they're saying is Bundy, this horrible, nasty person, made the federal officers afraid. He made them wet their pants. Well, that's not polite. He made them scared. So because the poor federal officers got scared, they're not going to give him bail, and they're going to keep him locked in a federal jail, or actually it's a state jail, for quite some time. That makes no sense for me. And another one if you get a chance, sir. I'm going to do one also, please. Talking to some help here.
Yeah, bring one more of those if you would when you get a chance. No hurry.
Thank you.
All right, go ahead.
So bear in mind, this is why this is so important. They give murderers, people who actually kill people, they give them bail.
Yeah.
But they're saying because you scared our federal officers, we're not going to give you bail. Well, you think he's a flight risk. Excuse me, he's been around for 2 years. He was going up to help a friend of his when they arrested him. He wasn't fleeing anything. So this judge saying that he's a risk to somebody's health and well-being, and he might be a flight risk, how do I say this politely, in my opinion? Yo, judge, you are a liar.
Amen.
And you need to get off the bench.
Amen.
And you need to be impeached because, A, you have a conflict of interest with Harry Reid. B, you're lying, and that's my personal opinion.
Well, I agree with that personal opinion. It is my opinion, too, Judge. You are indeed a liar. And the old saying that my grandkids used to use, liar, liar, pants on fire. Your pants are going to be on fire. God will set them on fire. Now, I want to say something about, and again, I'm not an attorney. The closest thing I have to legal background is I spent 5 years in the state of Texas licensed as a private investigator. Now, with that in mind, later in life, I had a case in court. We took a case to the Supreme Court called Drake v. Obama. Now, everybody knows about that. That was the original birther case. I bring that up not to talk about that case, but to tell you what had happened. Prior to the filing of that case, we had a special service here when some of our troops were killed early in the Mideast War by friendly fire. One of them happened to be a young man that resided in Buena Park, California. And so the family asked me to do the officiating at his funeral. And it was to be a full military honors funeral, which I've done before and was familiar with. And so I certainly agreed that, yes, we would do his honor. We would honor that veteran who lost his life fighting there in the Middle East. Now, I bring that up to simply say this. At that point, when that was going on here, we were going to have thousands of people here at the church because it was a well-known funeral. So a lot of people came, and there was one judge. Now, I bring this whole story up to talk about the differences in judges. Here was Judge Carter. Now, Judge Carter, I had a great deal of respect for him, had not been in his court except to observe, but when he came to the church, he came to me personally and said, Pastor, thank you. I, too, am a former military man, and I know you were in the Navy, and I just want to say thank you for doing the services for this military man and helping the family. And I said, well, you're welcome, Judge. But I said, Judge, I need your help. And he said, well, what do you mean? I'm a judge. I'm not a pastor. And I said, well, I need your help. I need your help to help me in the service for this military man. As a former military man, retired military, I want you to participate in the service. And he was overwhelmed. He said, I can't believe it. I'm not a pastor. I said, that's okay. You can read the Bible, can't you? He said, oh, yes. And so Judge Carter assisted me in that memorial service for that Marine that lost his life fighting for our freedom. That was several years ago. And then later after that is when I then found myself in Judge Carter's courtroom. And I was there with Drake v. Obama, our case. And when the judge introduced the case, he stopped and said, before we go any further, I need to say to the government's attorney, the prosecuting, or whatever he was, the attorney from the Justice Department, he said, I must say to you, Mr. Attorney, I personally know Pastor Wiley Drake. In fact, I helped him officiate a funeral a couple of years back. And so if that would upset you, me being the judge in your case, you tell me and I will recuse myself. And of course the attorney said, oh no, we don't mind, Your Honor, that's fine. But there was a perfect example of a man who was so honest and so above board that even participating in a funeral service he thought could have been a conflict of interest and could have recused himself. But he didn't. He said, okay, then we'll proceed ahead. But he gave that opportunity.
Let me have the story. And again, I do not give opinions unless I have personal experience or knowledge to base it on. Let me tell you what my opinion on how bad and unethical and immoral this judge is. While I was an attorney, I also sat as a judge in the various courts in Southern California. It is sometimes referred to as a judge pro tem. What you are is a voluntary judge, and that means that you are trying to help the bench because they get busy, and so they will ask us to take traffic tickets and small claims cases, and we preside on the bench, wear the black robe, have to make decisions. We're bound by all of the rules and regulations concerning being a judge. So I was sitting as a judge pro tem in Rancho Cucamonga one day, and it was on traffic tickets. And so I get on the robe and I go out onto the bench and sit down, and lo and behold, sitting where the officers sit while they're waiting for the tickets to be called was an officer that I had trained. He was a reserve with me at Laverne Police Department. He ultimately wound up going to the Highway Patrol. And so I'm thinking to myself, well, here is an interesting problem. We have a judge who used to be a black and white partner with this officer who is now here to testify about a ticket. And so I called the citizen up that had gotten the ticket, and I said, ma'am, I need to disclose to you. And I told her that story, and she says, thank you for telling me, but because you tell me I trust you, go ahead and hear the ticket. Yeah. And so I gave her the chance to challenge me if she wished, because I didn't want to have any appearance of impropriety. So this is not a criticism without personal experience. Been there, done that, did the right thing. This judge is not doing the right thing.
And, as we said, folks, you would think she would have enough sense to realize that even though she might feel she should be trusted, that the other side certainly had the right to say, no, we just soon not have someone who's biased on there and remove herself. But, of course, she has refused. She has said, no, I'm not going to do it. In fact, and it took her 6 pages to do it, and but she said she would not remove herself from the criminal case. And so we want you to continue to pray not only for our friends who are in the hospital, but for our friends, 19 of them, our brothers in the Lord, in the jail, in the state of Nevada and Oregon, I believe both. But anyway, we want you to pray for them as well, as they are not facing life and death in that sense, although they could, because Cliven Bundy is not a young fella. And I find out quite often I get involved in some pretty aggressive activity, and sometimes I decide, I better back off of this a little bit, because after all, I am 72 years old, and an old man shouldn't be doing quite that much.
So you don't want to debate issues with me anymore?
No, I'll be glad to do that, because that doesn't take any energy.
Thank you.
But anyway, the bottom line is, Cliven Bundy's life is in danger. Here he is, an old man, and a rancher who's used his body up riding horses and busting broncs and cows and all that kind of, and he is not a young whippersnapper. He's an old man, and he's in prison, having to eat rotten food and not being very well taken care of, and so it could indeed cost him his life.
I'm going to switch topics real quick because we're short on time, but we are coming up on Memorial Day.
Yes.
There is a huge difference between Memorial Day and Veterans Day, although they're starting to get merged, and I don't have a problem with it being merged, but let's make sure that we know what's an apple and what's an orange. Yeah. Memorial Day is the day that we honor those who have given their lives in defense of this country.
Yes. Veterans
Day is where we honor those who have served their country in the service, but they are not necessarily dead.
Yeah.
So Memorial Day is in terms of religious issues. Memorial Day, I think, tends to be a little bit higher of the two holidays because we're dealing with the dead, those who have passed, and hopefully are all in heaven as a result of it.
Amen.
One of the things I want to talk about, because it so aggravates me, and I'm going to show you something here real quick so you ladies and gentlemen can be aware of this. What this is a veteran's ID card. And what it says is VA, U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs, and it has my picture on it, and it says that I was in the Air Force and it has my name on it. This is the card they issue that verifies I am a veteran. And I think this is an excellent idea
Amen.
for the government to start passing these out.
Amen.
Now, the reason why I bring this to your attention is I have no doubt that with the oncoming of Memorial Day, you are going to see people with either cardboard signs at the end of freeways or people coming up and bothering you at stores or at gas stations asking for money, claiming to be a veteran. Well, guess what, ladies and gentlemen? Great, let me see your veteran's card.
Amen.
And if they can't produce a card, don't give them the time of day.
Amen. Amen. I agree with that.
It's bad enough that they lie about it and try to take advantage of you honoring the dead who have died for the country, and it just frustrates me no end. But needless to say, when I get approached by one of these people, I'm generally not very polite to them.
Well, and I agree, and I think we need to not be polite to those kind of con artists, those rip-off artists. In fact, the matter is, a couple of Memorial Days ago, I had a man approach me on Memorial Day and say, "Sir, since it's Memorial Day, could you let me have some money?" And I said, well, why should I let you have money on Memorial Day? Because I said Memorial Day is not for the living, it's for the dead. It's a memorial for those that gave their life for this country. And I don't mind giving you money to help you. In fact, I run a homeless shelter. You're welcome to come there and eat. And so he got very angry with me because I would, I know the difference between Memorial Day and Veterans Day. And I said, "Were you a veteran?" And he said, "Yes." And I said, "Well, sir, thank you for your service to our country, but this day today is for those who not only were veterans, but those who were veterans of death, i.e. memorializing them, and that's why we're doing it. Now, I would be glad to give you some money." I reached in my pocket, and he began to cuss and carry on, and I said, "Now, wait a minute. I was going to give you some money, but I'm not now, because you're desecrating a very special holiday, Memorial Day. And I'm not giving you nothing, even if you are a veteran. And I would doubt if you are a veteran." And so anyway, I believe we need to honor Memorial Day, and I believe we need to honor the veterans on Memorial Day, but we need to get it in its proper priority and do what's right. Now, we are praying about a lot of things, but...
Well, we have something else that we're going to talk about real quick.
Go ahead.
It was announced today that 11 states, attorney generals of states, being led by Texas, are suing a guy by the name of Barry Soetoro / Obama and Loretta Lynch and the federal government for trying to force the transgender use any bathroom you want rule at schools, where there was an implied threat that we are not going to give you federal money to feed the children at the schools if you don't follow our, quote, recommendation on allowing transgenders to go into whatever bathroom they want. Mm-hmm. And to these credit, these 11 states have said, nah, we don't think so. That's none of your business. That is state business. And as a result, we're suing you. Yeah. So now we have think about this. We have a president that is being sued by 3 different groups of states for doing illegal things. One is the states that are suing because Obamacare is illegal. States are suing him. His amnesty for illegal aliens, and I know that we're supposed to be polite and say undocumented or whatever. No, they're illegal. They violated the law when they came across the street. And for example, the next time a police officer stops you because you ran a stop sign or going a little bit fast, you can tell him, well, I was just undocumented when I ran that stop sign, so I expect you to be nice to me and not write me a ticket. Mm-hmm. And he's probably going to tell you, no, you were illegal when you ran the stop sign, right, and you're going to get a ticket. That's right. So that's why that terminology makes no sense. Yeah. And now the last one is the transgender. So we have a president that is so outrageous, states of the union are suing him because he keeps breaking the law.
Amen. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we've talked about a lot of things today. Our friends who are in the hospital, some of our other friends who are in prison. We've talked about a lot of things today, talked about the legal mess that our so-called president, Mr. Barry Soetoro, who you know him as, many, a.k.a. Barack Hussein Obama. But I want us to move now to another subject, and that is dealing with murder. And I will not call it any other thing but murder. When a woman exterminates or has someone exterminate her child, that is murder. I don't care what age it is. What would you say if I said about my neighbor, she has a 10-year-old girl, and she got angry with her and shot and killed her? You'd say that's murder. Well, the only difference between that and their so-called abortions is a time limit. Now, baby murdering is wrong, and it's frustrating. But there is something we can do about it, and I want to share in a few moments that we have left what you can do about these murderers of our babies. Back a few years ago, I began to pray what I call imprecatory prayer. That's the place in the Bible where God says we're to pray His judgment, not my judgment, but His judgment upon those people who are doing so terribly wrong, especially those that were sodomites, especially those that were baby murderers, and we did. And so I'm here to tell you that God does answer imprecatory prayer. Now, I had nothing to do with this man's death, and I want to hasten to say that, because every time you talk about imprecatory prayer, the government wants to come in and arrest you for threatening someone, and I'm not threatening anyone. I'm just telling you that God says we have the right to imprecatory prayer. We prayed imprecatory prayer on a gentleman by the name of Tiller. He was known as Tiller the Killer. George Tiller was doing late-term abortions, killing babies even after they were born, stabbing them in the back of the head with a pair of scissors, even after they were born. Now, George Tiller was a killer. And I said on nationwide television that I was glad that God killed him. Now, there was a man that was involved in his shooting and so forth. I don't know anything about that. I don't know whether that was right, wrong, or whatever, but the bottom line is I believe God brought about imprecatory prayer and killed George Tiller. Now, there is another person in reference to George Tiller, and that is a woman that worked for him. She was his right-hand man. She was one of his chief baby murderers. and baby setting up murders for babies being murdered. And her name is Julie Burkhart. Julie Burkhart, B-U-R-K-H-A-R-T. And I have said this before, and I'll say it again. Ms. Burkhart, that's what she likes to be called, Julie, for all the babies that you have murdered, God is going to deal with you. I and many others have prayed imprecatory prayer on Julie Burkhart. And I want you to know, folks, God is answering our prayer. It's a slow answer, but it's coming. If you look on the internet and pull up a picture of Julie Burkhart, I don't know how old she is, but she looks old as dirt because she is suffering. Physically, because she has killed babies. How can you kill a baby and it not affect you? She has killed dozens of babies, and if you look at a picture of her, and here is one, you can pull it up and look at it yourself. There's an example of imprecatory prayer coming about, because she now plans to open a new late-term baby murdering business in Oklahoma City this summer. And we want you to know, folks, we're going to continue to pray imprecatory prayer against this Julie Burkhart.
And let me tell you, ladies and gentlemen, why this is so important. One of the things that we must stress is if you want to exercise an opinion, demonstrate, voice on social media, you're contrary to something, it's very important for you to study what it is you're contrary to, so that when you speak not with just emotion or avarice or bias or prejudice, but that you speak from knowledge. And as a result of that, if you have not read the Supreme Court decision in Roe, R-O-E, versus Wade, W-A-D-E, before you take a position on abortion, by all means, read it. And when you read it, you find out that it's completely, totally, absolutely different than what the pro-abortion people are saying. The court didn't just hand a e-ticket to everybody that wanted to go get an abortion. Just the opposite. They said, no, this is a really serious problem, and we got to be really careful with this. What they said was that, well, we're going to go ahead and say, okay, if it's the first trimester. In other words, we have 9 months of pregnancy, and so month 1, 2, or 3 is the first trimester. And they're saying, okay, we have a little more inclination to approve for that. The trouble is, after the first trimester, the child now starts taking on very human attributes. They have a heartbeat. You can actually see them moving or feel them moving if you're the woman. They are human beings.
Amen.
And even the Supreme Court in Roe v. Wade said this is a problem. So let's give the benefit of the doubt under Roe v. Wade and say, yeah, okay, first trimester, we're going to have to fight about this one. This gal is outrageous. She is talking about late term. She's talking about second and third trimester. She is talking about situations where the baby can live outside of the womb.
Yeah.
And so she's saying, well, because the baby's not breathing on his own yet, we can kill them. That is murder, pure and simple.
Amen.
And for her to try to argue that there's some right, constitutional right to privacy, to be able to kill a viable child who could live outside of the mother if there was an emergency, makes no sense to me whatsoever. And it's even worse. In many states, if you have a late-term murder of a mother who obviously is pregnant carrying the child, killing the mother kills the child. The murderer is charged with 2 counts of murder. Count 1 for the mother, count 2 for the unborn child. Okay, explain this to me. If you can charge murder for killing an unborn child, why is it okay to murder the unborn child and not get charged with murder?
Amen. Well, you're absolutely right. And as we talk about these things, we see in one respect, there's probably nothing new under the sun. I remember, I'm old enough to remember studying a little bit of it in school about the Holocaust, where there was a thing called the Nuremberg trial, and their excuse was, well, we were just doing our job. Well, their job was to gas, murder Jews, and they were just doing their job. And we know that's no excuse. The trial said so. There's a new thing now that's being said that is as old as that, and that is simply this. When they pass that law, when they talk about murdering these kids, let me tell you what this Julie Burkhart murderer said. She said she may consider filing a lawsuit against the states that outlaw baby murder. And then she claimed her abortionists have good hearts, and she wants to do everything in her power to protect them. Here is a murderer saying her fellow murderers have good hearts. That's like saying, and we saw this not too long ago, when some of the family members of Charles Manson, and Charles Manson was a murderer, killed Sharon Tate and others, and had others killed. He was a murderer, but you know what some of those family members said? Oh, he had such a good heart. He was so good. He had a good heart. Well, George Tiller, the killer, paid the ultimate price for his sin in this earth, and he was killed. I believe we're seeing a slower methodology, but I believe if you look at the pictures, go back just a few years and look at a picture of Julie Burkhart, you will find that she is aging at a very fast pace. She has plenty of money. She could get a facelift. Maybe has, I don't know, but I do know this. All you have to do is look at the pictures over the last few years, and you will see a woman that is aging very, very fast. And that is an answer to the imprecatory prayer of this pastor and many other people. And we're going to continue to pray imprecatory prayer against her and against Barry Soetoro, a.k.a. Barack Hussein Obama. That imprecatory prayer, if you'd like to read it, just simply take out your Bible and go to the book of Psalms. Psalms 109 is where you'll find it. And Psalms 109, I'm going to share with you the prayer that we have been praying for this Ms. Burkhart. And here's what the prayer says. They compass us about with words of hatred, and they have rewarded evil for good. When he shall be judged, didn't say he could be, it says he shall be judged. She shall be judged. Let them be condemned, and let their prayer become sin. Let their days be few. Miss Burkhart, your days are running out. Let the children be fatherless, and the wife a widow.